I want to show you a real world contract that I used with a subcontractor and see how everything that we've talked about so far in terms of clarifying the expectations is in that contract. So this is a contract that I had with a really great designer called Arthur. He helped me on a project with a client called Protantex. He helped me on the branding. So you'll see that a lot of this contract is actually looks like the creative brief, but also adds a few more details on the communication and other legal terms. So let's start. The goal is we need to have 2 creative directions for the brand finalized by a date. And then this is an overview of the project, quite like the ones in the brief, a little bit about the company, and then what we need. Note that I'm defining here really even to the kind of file format. So we need presentations in Keynote format, showcasing 2 directions. Each direction should have a name, show references, and how the logo was concept with some mock-ups. And I've actually added an example for how I like to structure my presentation. So everything is really clear. There's a reference for exactly what I need. Afterwards, I will need the logo in vector format and all the mock-ups in PSD format. So again, very clear what files I'll need and what formats. Here are the presentation mock-ups that should be included: business card, office sign, big conference stage, social media t-shirt, and a homepage hero. And again, I told him for the hero of the homepage, just use the value proposition or big idea from the strategy presentation that I gave him in the original brief. In terms of creative direction, a little bit of how it needs to look like. So it needs to be modern and techy, but also feel established, and a little bit bullet points about the creative direction. Then there's a whole section here about the confidentiality, which was in this specific project was something very important. So I wrote here, this project is super confidential and you might need to sign an NDA. So an NDA stands for non-disclosure agreement. In this case, I needed to sign this, but at the end of the day, the subcontractor didn't need to sign this, but it was very important to clarify how, nothing about this project is to be communicated outside of this project. So no mentions on social media, on the web, or anything like this. After the project is launched and live, showcasing the project in your portfolio is subject to the client approval. Basically, it should be okay, but just don't do it without permission. So note how we clearly state all of these things before we start the project, okay? So there's no miscommunication. In this video, I want to go through the different aspects of your business that you might want to delegate to other people and see how we need to think about each of them. So let's start about delegating some design work. It's very common for freelancers who are starting a design business to get help when it comes to design, whether it is, as I've mentioned before, have somebody take on their work and work on their idea on page 2, 3, 4 of a website, for example. It's also a lot of times necessary to have somebody with a complementing skill. So, for example, I would work with other creatives who might be better logo designers, who might be good at hand lettering if that's necessary, or 3D artists, or all kinds of different skill sets that I personally don't have. And a lot of times it would be better if I just give it to a professional instead of me trying to do it myself. So what you want to have when you're starting to work is slowly you want to build up your arsenal of experts who you can talk to if you have specific needs. All right, so basically you want to have some kind of a collection of people that ideally you already have a relationship with, and this is the best logo designer, this is the best 3D artist, this is a great photographer, this is a great writer, and you can hire them when you need them for specific things. Okay, the way that I do this, I'm very active on Instagram, so I collect or interact with other creatives who are also active on Instagram. But you can also do this on Dribbble or other platforms where a lot of creators and designers hang out on. So basically, the way that I do this using Instagram is I use the save post. When you save a post, you can save it to collections. So I basically open up collections, 3D freelancers, web designers, illustrators, typographers. I have many different collections on my Instagram, and every time I would see a work that impresses me, and I would say, that is really amazing. I want to develop a relationship with this person. So I would start by saving up all these different people, and then I would start by reaching out to them and start building a relationship with them. And I remind you, this is before I actually need them for a project, because I want to be at the position where we have a project and we need to start moving fast. I'll know who the best person is. I'll know how they're thinking about pricing, what's their process like. So in Instagram, it's very easy. You can start sending people direct messages. And I start with things that are very simple, like, wow, here's a great work, I love it. And that's kind of starting to build a relationship. And then later on, like in this example, I can already start asking them, hey, are you available for a project in the next few weeks? And then you start a discussion, and then a lot of times you would move the discussion into email. But that's, again, Instagram is a very great tool for relationship building, especially in the creative industry. But you can also do this on platforms like Dribbble, Behance, or just reaching out to people on email if you saw their portfolio. Now, as I've mentioned, you want to kind of get to know them or interview them, or at least have some kind of conversation with them before you need them. That would help make the process, because usually when you're already in the process of working with a client, you need to start moving fast, and you need to know to estimate what the cost of the projects are going to be, so you don't have time to start interviewing a lot of different people for a specific task that you need in a website, for example. So you want to do that, keep doing this on an ongoing base, kind of as part of your business development for your business, as kind of a weekly task of developing relationship, just like you do with potential clients. Develop these relationship with potential subcontractors, and we'll talk about how to interview them in the next video. So after you'll do that, after you decided that you want to hire them, you'll send them a clear brief. This is actually after you decided to want to work with them. And let me show you an example of a brief that I sent. So this is an example, a Google Doc that I sent to Radim Malinik. He's a great designer based in the UK, and we worked together on this project for the W. W is a website that I designed for a company, and I wanted his work on the logo, a little bit of the brand, and a little bit of the visual side of the website. So this is how I wrote the brief. First of all, it's a goal. We need to have a brand facelift and website design for W before Christmas. And then this is basically the overview of the company and what do they need. So in this case, W is a global community that turns on woman leader. They have 3 days retreat. This is basically a little bit about the organization. And here I attached the original design brief that they sent to me, and also the brand strategy that I did for them. Here's specifically what I need from him, which was a logo, brand color and typography system, and website as an application. And I already sent him the wireframes that I designed myself, and also social media template. Now I've also added here a little bit of creative direction, because this is part of what I was working with the client. I've showed them a few examples to try to get aligned on the visual side of things. And so these are the kind of directions that they liked. So I've attached this here so Radim will see, basically what they liked. So this is what I sent to him. This was a way to kick off our mutual work together. And this is probably how you want to communicate with your subcontractors when you're delegating design. Let's talk about development. So one thing in development that is different than design is that a lot of time when you're going to do web project, you're going to have to think about who's going to support the work afterwards. Because when you're delegating design, somebody can send you the files. For example, Radim sent me the files. He never had to interact with the client. Only I did the client interaction. And they didn't know him. They didn't have to do anything with him. However, if I delegate the development of a website and then I finish the project, I'll have to think about who's going to, after I go and the project is over, who's going to maintain the website. Are they going to come back to me every time they need to fix an issue on the website, or are they going to directly talk with the developer that I hired? So each of these is a possibility, and depending on what you want, you might choose somebody that will be able to directly work with the clients afterwards. So you'll have to consider, one, whether they're a good fit to actually work with the client directly later on. Two, do they even want this? So this is something that you'll want to keep in mind when you're starting to delegate development as well. Now, if you're looking for somebody to delegate Webflow work, you can always find good people in our community. Reach out to me or post in our Webflow Masterclass group. There's tons of people that would love to collaborate with you or help you out in Webflow development. If you're hiring people for WordPress development or other platforms, you can find a lot of good people on Upwork, and I actually hired a lot of times on Upwork. Basically, what you'll want to do is you want to use a similar strategy on how we hire designer, which is a lot of times interview them before you're actually going to hire them for the project, okay, to understand who are the good service providers on the platform, and then send them a brief quite like the one that we used for the designer, but for the development aspect of things. The last thing that I want to mention is that when clients hire you to develop a website for them, you are the one who is responsible for the quality of the development work. Now, whether you do it yourself or you outsource this to somebody else, you are still responsible for delivering good quality of work. That means you'll be responsible for the QA, quality assurance. So whenever you're delegating work to somebody else, make sure that you are going through every page in the website, testing it out on mobile, and making sure that the work is good before you move it on to your client. Let's talk about delegating finances. As I've mentioned, this was one of the first things that I delegated in my business. To do that, you must have separate business bank accounts. Now, we talked about this when we talked about finances in general, but obviously you won't be able to delegate because you'll have to give access to this bank account. You probably don't want to give access to your personal bank account, or at least it will be very hard for the person that you'll be delegating to overview your personal bank account. So it's way easier if you have a separate business account. So this is the first step if you want to delegate that. Now, the first step is maybe you already have somebody who is in a good position to track your finances. Maybe you already have a bookkeeper or an accountant that can do all of this for you. You can just show them, the documents that we are using to keep track, the cash flow document and the profit loss document, and maybe they can actually do this for you. So you want to check this out first. Now, this is kind of a part-time position because as a freelancer, there's not tons of work to do. So you can find somebody who's maybe an ideal as a part-time work. It can be either for moms, students, or people who just want to work few hours a week. They can do this from home. So make sure that you understand that who's a good fit for this role. Now, in a different than when we talked about delegating design or development, which is kind of a project, this is kind of a retainer contract, which means this is an ongoing relationship with somebody. So you'll have to develop a relationship and you'll have to hire them, hopefully for the long term. Okay, so basically what you'll do is you'll show them the finance documents that we covered in the finance doc, and perhaps even let them read profit first so you'll understand how to manage, how do you want to have your finances managed. Do you want to take out profits out of the business? Do you want to move things to how often do you want them to send the salary back to your personal bank account? You basically want to align with them how you want your finances to be handled, and and then hire them as a retainer contract, and we'll get back into the hiring in the next video. I want to talk about delegating marketing now. So first of all, I think a lot of people don't even think about that this is a possibility, that they can hire somebody to create either content for them or either a freelancer or an agency to generate the leads for them. Okay, and it can be by doing ads, by doing business development, by doing content. There's a lot of things, and that, depending on the marketing strategy that you choose, you can hire somebody to do that for you. You don't always have to do it yourself. And I think this can be a big insight for a lot of people who never think about this. However, as I've mentioned in the previous video about delusional delegation, this is the most easy trap to fall, because there's a lot of people there who will promise you, oh, I can get you clients, I can grow your business, I can. And if it's too good to be true, a lot of times it's probably a delusion and they won't be able to do this. Okay, so you want to make sure that you understand exactly how they're going to do the work. Okay, what's the process? Because there's a lot of people, for example, on LinkedIn who are saying, oh, we're going to automate reaching out to people and we're going to get you 6 leads every week. And when you ask them about the process, you will see that it's a little bit of spammy. They're sending like 2,000 emails from your account per week. And maybe that's not a process that you'll feel comfortable with. So you want to make sure that you understand how they're going to do the work and that it's in line with how you want your business to run. So ask them to see results of similar businesses. Ask to see the proof that they can actually do this, to make sure that, again, this is not a delusion. And remember, marketing is how people first encounter your brand. You want this to be in line with who you are and your values. Okay, so if somebody is going to create content for you, you have to really understand that they understand who you are, they understand your niche, they know how to create valuable content for them, and that the first impression that people have about your brand is actually a good one. Okay, if you take the time to understand and do your due diligence about the person that you're going to hire for this role, then this can really be a game changer, because a lot of designers obviously want to focus a lot on doing the design versus doing the marketing in their freelance business. So if you can find a good alignment on these things, this can be a game changer. However, it's easy to fall trap to the delusion, so just make good work interviewing and finding a good partner.